So, Avengers Endgame. What an experience! So, what I'm trying to say basically here with all these words is that this is a spoiler review. So, there will be spoilers. So, if you're staying here, it's either that you don't care about spoilers, even though you didn't see the movie, or you've already seen the movie and are coming here to know my thoughts. Either way, I'm excited to have you on board, and let's discuss my opinions with spoilers on Avengers Endgame. Hey, ho, let's go! Now, before we talk about the positives, let's talk about the negatives. In my spoiler-free review, I talked about how I was disappointed with the way they treated Thor's character, and I'm still very disappointed. I mean, others might have found it funny and comedic and maybe even charming, but I just didn't really like how they made him this fat, overweight guy with a really long beard who drinks a lot of beer. I mean, it's okay. I get what they were going for. They were trying to grow Thor as a character and show how he didn't really deal with what happened. However, I still prefer it if they didn't risk it too much but kept the old Thor. Maybe it's just me. That's just my opinion. You're free to have yours. Another character who I was not too amazed with their treatment of was Hulk. Now, before I watched the movie, there was a theory that there's gonna be Professor Hulk. Like a Hulk who is both a professor and a Hulk. And even though this is not a Professor Hulk in this movie, it's kind of the same stupid idea. I don't think Hulk and Banner should be the same. Again, I really appreciate the way directors treated it. They really grew the Hulk as a character in this movie and progressed him in the natural way. However, I think Hulk still should have remained separate from Bruce Banner and not joined them together into one and the same. But another one of my main issues with this movie was a part of the very beginning. So basically, it started out with this incredible scene. It's very fun at first, it's just so charming, with Hawkeye spending time with his family and so on, and basically them having fun, him training his daughter to shoot arrows and so on, and then Thanos snaps and they all disappear. And this is a tragic, emotional, and scary scene, just scary because of how tensionful it is. And then immediately it cuts to the Marvel logo, and even though it's not this joyful music that they play every time, it's still not as sad or scary as it's supposed to be. It immediately goes into this this fun, campy feeling, and I think that just is a balance of tone compared to the previous scene, which was just so horrifying, so terrifying, and so quick, just so rapid sadness, that right now it immediately threw off the effect by just putting this fun music on. And even though they did have a bit of a pause, it should have been longer so that they could fully put you into the atmosphere that this movie is going to have. And now let's talk about Hawkeye. Because going into this movie, Hawkeye was the character I wanted to see the least. I didn't like him in any of the previous movies. I mean, he was a nice character and all. I really enjoyed how he interacted with his family. Not just in this movie, but I mean in the previous ones. But in the previous ones, he was just not interested to me. So I was so unexcited for him in this movie. And boy, did this movie subvert my expectations and how they made him. They just made him more interesting. They just made him more likable, more built up, and just how his character arc progressed throughout the movie, I liked him much more. I think maybe it's the Russo's writing that upgraded him so much, or maybe his bigger involvement with the story. Especially that scene where he basically beats up the bad guys with his swords. That was the scene I really didn't want to see because when I saw parts of it in the trailer, I was like, oh, it's gonna be so boring. How Black Widow meets him in the rain and something. But it was so cool. And Hawkeye just beating everyone up with his sword and brum, brum, brum. It was so cool, especially those Chinese guys or Japanese guys or whatever they were. Now, the next character who I want to talk about is Thanos. Because going into this movie, he's the character who I least knew what to expect. Like, I thought that his story was pretty much wrapped up at the end of Infinity War. And I didn't think that he should have continued as a villain, as I thought that his goal was basically over. So I thought that if they continued him after this moment, then it would be bad. So I was very surprised to find out that basically, as soon as he started out, they immediately decapitated him and he died. At first, I was very disappointed because I thought they went with the Snoke path, where they basically kill him off, and then the rest of the movie they choose a less interesting villain or just no villain at all and make it more boring. But I was wrong, because they didn't make it like Thanos survived and became a villain. And I think that would have been bad, but instead they made the villain the Thanos from the past. And I think that's just great. Even though I was very surprised and kind of disappointed that they decapitated him in the beginning of the movie, I think how they treated him further on was much better and really served the story well. The thing that I didn't really like about Thanos in this movie, however, is the way he dresses himself. In the previous movies, he always used to wear the golden armor and the golden helmet and everything, and I really liked that. I think that was a cool design. But here he just wears a t-shirt. And I know that it was in the comics as well, but I mean, it still doesn't look very good. I did like Thanos more in the beginning of the movie than I liked him in the end and in the middle of it. When he's on that farm collecting those fruits that look like the things that grow in the trees on Dathomir in Star Wars, he's kind of fun because his character arc finished. He is now just a farmer. He just does, what he promised to do at the end of the last movie. But then we go to Thanos in the past. This is where I don't like him. Now, I've always stated that I prefer the Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy and Age of Ultron to the one in Infinity War, because I think that in Infinity War they gave him too much of a personality and kind of took away the charm that he had in the previous movies. And in this movie, they took away again all of his emotional things, at least in the middle and in the end. But they overdid his evilness. Like in Guardians and Ultron, he was okay. And he wasn't too evil, which made him likable, but also an intimidating villain. But here they just took him too far, to the point where in the end when he's like, I will destroy your Earth. Like previously I wanted to wipe out half the population, but now I will destroy all of it. Now he just seems like a character who is both unfaithful to his portrayal in Guardians and Ultron because he's far more evil than he was in those movies, and also Infinity War because he's also far more evil than in those movies, and now his motivation is gone. So he's like a completely new character, far more evil than any other portrayal, and with less of a motivation, and just wasn't executed as well as he used to be. But enough about the negatives. Let's talk about the positives, which there are a lot of in this movie. So, first of all, I love the time travel aspect. I love time travel in movies. And the movie that I liked it the most in was Man in Black 3, until now. Because this movie is so good at using it. Like, I love the way that they return us to previous movies, to scenes, add additional weight to characters who weren't so kind of important in the past, and how they return us to very familiar locations, to very familiar characters, changed it all up a bit, give every character in the group a little of a purpose in the past. Just how they make it all work so much and how they make it so interesting is so great, because time travel is always interesting for me. I'm always interested in how they will make it work, and especially in this movie, I was so happy to go back to locations we've already known. The Battle of New York was great. I didn't really like the Battle of New York in the first Avengers movie because it was kind of boring, but in this movie, I love it now. I loved Thor: The Dark World. It still is my first on the list of favorite Marvel movies, and I've loved that we were returning to that movie. I also really liked how we returned to both Morak and Vormir. That was just so great. I loved it. Another thing that I loved about this movie is how many characters from the previous movies they returned. I mean, seriously, I really wanted to see all these characters together, and now that we've got it, I'm so happy. But first of all, let's talk about who we've got returning. First of all, we've got Alexander Pierce returning in this movie. Now, I really liked Alexander Pierce in The Winter Soldier. In fact, he is very high on my list of the MCU villains. I really liked his portrayal, his evilness, and just how he is this businessman man. And I absolutely loved him in this movie. I think it's very good that they got him back, and especially the part that he played in the story, he felt very natural. It's natural that he would be in the Battle of New York. It's natural that Hydra would exist in that time, which we already know. And I really liked seeing more of Hydra in the Winter Soldier act in the Battle of New York without really being uncovered yet.